Welcome to Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt of the Marquardt Law Firm at marquardtlawfirm.com.
Welcome back to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt. You're listening on 9:30 a.m. The Answer podcasts or YouTube or Facebook Live. Today I'm live. It's December 16th, 2023, and I'm taking questions about the Corporate Transparency Act, which is going to require millions or even tens of millions of new small businesses or even existing businesses, whether you filed in the 70s or before that or after that. We're talking a huge, very large number of businesses that are going to be registering with the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. How do you feel about that? Call me now at 210-308-8867, 210-308-8867. I'm interested in knowing how you feel about registering your law-abiding business with a government agency, whether you think that's necessary or whether you think it's important that the government do more to crack down on money laundering and financial terrorism. You probably heard during the commercial break about Liberty Tax with Hector Saenz. He and I talked about year-end tax planning on October 29th, 2023. So you can watch or listen to that episode that we previously recorded, and it's still 2023, so there might be still some things that you can do now that will affect how much you pay on April 15th, 2024. So accountants and attorneys like to call that year-end tax planning. Of course, you have to do everything in compliance with the law, and nothing that Hector or I say will allow you to escape liability from violating Internal Revenue Code laws or regulations. But if you want personal advice, you should contact an accountant, tax preparer, or Hector Saenz at Liberty Tax. You can email him at hector.saenz, which is spelled S as in Sam, A-E, N as in Nancy, Z, at Liberty South San, that's Liberty South, S as in Sam, A as in Apple, N as in Nancy.com, and get some help planning for your federal tax return. Today I'm talking about the Corporate Transparency Act, which I'm going to be doing a lot of registering with my clients because we use business entities for those who have small businesses or those who want to protect and preserve their assets or for estate planning purposes. So I want to talk about some of the estate planning purposes because you may have done this already. If your estate planning attorney suggested that you establish an LLC or maybe a family limited partnership, we may need to talk, or you may need to call your existing attorney. So how does the Corporate Transparency Act affect your estate planning? Does your estate plan include strategies using LLCs or limited partnerships? Complying with the requirements of the Corporate Transparency Act is of utmost importance if you own a business entity or have one as part of your estate plan, because we routinely create entities that might qualify as what's referred to now as a reporting company as part of our estate plan. If you have one, you need to learn more about the financial FinCEN, the financial, let's see, what is it called? I'm losing it. Okay, let me find, what is FinCEN? It's the United States Department of Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. Say that 10 times fast. FinCEN, like the fin of a fish, and center, sin. F is in Frank, I, N is in Nancy, C is in cat, E, N is in Nancy. That's FinCEN, U.S. Department of Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. That's who law-abiding business owners are going to have to register with. Okay, so let me go back to how does it affect your estate planning? Well, you might be using an LLC for a small business or holding rental companies. So this might apply to real estate investors, which we have a lot of in San Antonio. There's even a popular radio show for real estate investors. And so on this station that I listen to sometimes. And so if you also listen to that show and you have some rental properties, you might need to talk to your lawyer about this Corporate Transparency Act. You might have an LLC for investments or for otherwise protecting other assets. Or you might have a family limited partnership. We established a lot of those back in the day when the estate tax exemption was much lower because it was a way of discounting the value of an estate. It's a very complicated process now. The IRS has some new rulings that interpret how much discounting can be done and requires lots of valuations. So you probably, if you have a family limited partnership, you probably have an estate planning attorney on retainer. If you haven't spoken to your estate planning attorney in years, I suggest you reestablish contact. Find out what the updates are and talk about the Corporate Transparency Act. So you're probably wondering, as was I, whether a trust has to report this information to FinCEN. Although a trust is not considered to be a reporting company under the Corporate Transparency Act, if your trust owns an interest in a reporting company, like an LLC or Series LLC or limited partnership, certain information about your trust may also have to be disclosed under the Corporate Transparency Act because it might be deemed to be a beneficial owner. So let's define some more key terms here. What is a reporting company? What is a reporting organization? A reporting company, subject to the Corporate Transparency Act, is a corporation, LLC, or similar entity created by filing a document with the Secretary of State or similar office under the laws of a state or Indian tribe, or that was formed under the laws of a foreign country and registered to do business in the United States. So the types of companies that must report, unless exempt under some other provision, are any entity, any business entity that's created by filing a document with the Secretary of State or similar office. So it just goes to my point that if you filed something, a business type, you're probably going to have to do this unless you're exempt. And I'll talk about the exemptions a little later. Who has to file, or what information has to be disclosed? Well, you have to disclose who the beneficial owners are. And you might be a beneficial owner if you own at least 25% of a reporting company. Or you might be deemed to be a beneficial owner if you can exercise substantial control. What do you have to report? You have to report your name, date of birth, residential address, identifying number or FinCEN number, which is your Social Security number, tax identification number, or you can apply to FinCEN for some other number. But in order to get that FinCEN number, you have to disclose what your Social Security number or tax identification number is. How, when, where do you report? Well, the reporting requirement begins January 1st, 2024. It applies to entities created at any time, but the requirement to report begins after the first of the year. If you filed before January 1st, 2024, your due date for filing this information is due 1 year after the effective date. So if you've already filed now, then you have a whole year to file. If you create a new business entity after January 1st, 2024, you have 30 days to register that business with FinCEN. And if you're just joining the show, you're probably wondering why I keep saying FinCEN. It's a strange word. It's an abbreviation of the U.S. Department of Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN. And the reason I keep mentioning it is because law-abiding businesses have a requirement to register with FinCEN who the beneficial owners are of their reporting company. If you have questions about this that you want to talk about now, live on the air, call 210-308-8867, 210-308-8867. Let me know how much this upsets you, or how much you think that this is going to be a great thing for combating financial funding of terrorism and money laundering. Or you can text me at 210-538-4770. The text line is 538-4770. Or you can go to my website, talklawradio.com, and click Ask a Question. I've been talking about how to comply, or does the Corporate Transparency Act even apply to you? So many business regulations apply only to large businesses. The Corporate Transparency Act is unique because this one specifically targets small businesses. If we didn't already have enough to deal with in running a small business, now the federal government wants to be involved in our business. We have to register our company business owners and beneficial business owners and those with substantial control to the FinCEN. If you own a small business, you might be subject to this act unless you're exempt, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Your business might be exempt. Well, I'll say that later. A lot of people are worried that this information is going to be subject to public disclosure. And the government's telling us now that this information's not available to the public. FinCEN will only disclose information to financial institutions, law enforcement, and government agencies for compliance and anti-money laundering purposes. And we know that the federal government never does anything to weaponize the regulations that are on the books now, so we don't have anything to worry about. Stay tuned. I'll be talking more about saints, sinners, legacy, and the Corporate Transparency Act. Stay tuned.
This has been Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt, brought to you by the Marquardt Law Firm. You can learn more at marquardtlawfirm.com. And be sure to listen to the full Talk Law Radio show Saturday mornings at 11 on 9:30 a.m. The Answer.
Each week, attorney Todd Marquardt talks about the law. His mission with the Talk Law radio show and podcast is to help you discover your legal issue blind spots. In the beginning, God had one law. Don't eat from the fruit of that tree. Then came the Ten Commandments. Now we have federal, state, and municipal lawmakers that won't stop creating new laws. Laws that might impact you without you knowing it. Listen to the show and drop a line on Facebook or email host@talklawradio.com and let the host know what you think of the show, the topics you want to hear, and whether you want to be a guest.